Okay, for this video, I'll be demonstrating how to use data validation in Microsoft Excel, especially in a list. So what we're going to do first is type our heading. So let's say I have here ID, name, course, and then maybe gender or sex. Let's say I have here total fee, grade. So let's say these are the fields or the columns of my table. And then first you should be entering at least 2 rows of data for validation, or so that we can actually enter later on custom validation. But let's just try to place and 2 rows of data here. So let's say name, so female, 12,500, grade for example is 90. Then another set of data, so let's say BSCE, male. So here I have here now a list, but let us convert this list into a table so that the range of our validation later on will be automatically increasing as we increase the number of rows in our table. So to format this as a table, we just select our list, then here in our home ribbon we have here format as a table. So let's choose maybe this format. So it says here where is the data for your table. So it's from A1 to F3. So that's the range of my table. So my table has headers. Yes, so the first row is our header. So I'll just click OK. So here's now our table. Okay, so next I'll be naming the columns. So I'll be naming the columns, and although that will be especially be used for our custom validation, but let's just name all columns. So what I'm going to do is to select the first 2 rows here. Okay, and then here in this name box I'll be typing the name of this column. So IDs. Oh, that's the name of my column, IDs. Or the name of my columns, IDs. Then press enter key. So here, select. Then I'm going to name this as names. Select. Name this as courses. Select. Name this as gender. Select again total fees. It should be 1 word. So you notice I did not place any space between the 2 words here. So just a single word. Then grades. So I have named now all of my columns. Now let's place validation first. So we will leave first the ID, okay? For our name. So what will I do is to select the names. So names. So you notice once I type names, this column is already automatically selected. Okay. Then how do I place validation? So just click on the data ribbon here, and then I have here data validation. So click on data validation and then data validation. So I have here now my settings. So let's say my rule for my name is, so it will only be text length, for example. So the text length will be between, so the minimum number is, for example, 2 letters, and let's say the maximum is 75 letters. So you can apply this rules. So it's up to you actually. Then we can place here an error alert. So error message. So if, for example, the name that was entered by the user is not valid based on the length of the name, so the message will be invalid name length. Then just click OK. So I have to now place my validation for my name. For course and gender, let's say these are coming from a list. So let's say, for example, in this cell here, I'm going to type all of the valid courses. So let's say BS Crime, BS CS, BS IT, BS CE, BS A, BS BA, BS EE, BS Ed, so etc. So you can just type all of the courses that are valid courses, and then maybe here I'm going to place here the gender, female and male. Okay, so how do we now place validation on these courses? So I'll just type again the name of the column, courses, and then click on data validation, then data validation. So this time around, this will be coming from a list. So allow only values that are coming from a list. So I'll be typing here, or selecting here list, and then the source of my list. So I just click on the source and then select these cells here. So that's the source of my list from J1 up to J8. So that's the source of my list, and then I'll just click OK. So the same is true with the gender. Oh, I forgot what place here. Is it gender? So it's only gender, not genders. So anyway, so gender, and then data validation. So I have here data validation. Again, it's a list. So the source will be male and female, and then just click OK. So here, for total fees, so we can use the drop down here to select the column total fees, and then click on data validation. Data validation, it will allow, let's say, for example, decimal values. That means we can type fractions like 0.25, 0.75. And then let's say the minimum here is 0, and the maximum is, for example, 50,000. Okay, so that means any value lesser than 0 or greater than 50,000 will not be accepted by our program. So error alert. So let's say that's my message. Invalid total fee range should only be from 0 to 50,000, and then I'll just click here OK. So I have here now placed my validation for total fee. Then now next for the grade. So grade. So I have here now grades, and then validation, data validation. So let's say again, this time around for grade will be only accepting whole numbers. So between, let's say for example, between the lowest grade possible is 65, for example, and the highest grade possible is 99. And then if not, we just display a message saying the grade is invalid, and then just click here, okay. So far we have now our validation. So let's check. So I'll be typing here, let's say 113, and then I'll just type here a single letter. So you notice it says here that invalid name length because I just typed a single letter. So retry. And here in our course we have a drop down here, so we can choose the course. Here we can choose also only two possible values, male and female. And here if we enter a value higher than 50,000, then it shows here a message telling us that it is an invalid total fee. So the range should only be from 0 to 50,000. So retry, for example. So here 35,000. Then grade, if I place a grade of 100, for example, that will not be accepted because the highest grade that I specified should only be 99 and the lowest grade is 65. So if I use 60 as a grade, again it will not also be accepted. So 88 will all of course be accepted. Now let's have another validation, a custom validation for ID. Let's say that for the ID, it will not accept duplicate ID. So how do we do that? So first, I'm going to select ID, and then data validation. This time around, I'm going to use custom data validation, and I'm going to place here the formula. So equal to count if IDs in cell A2 should be lesser or equal to 1. That's the criteria. Count if IDs in cell A2 should be lesser or equal to 1. So it will count how many of the values I am entering. It should be lesser or equal to 1, because if it is greater than 1, that means it is already a duplicate ID number. So let's see if that is working. So I'll just click OK. So let's say I want to enter here 111 again. So yeah, the value you entered is not valid. I was not able to place our message, but of course this is the default message of Microsoft Excel. So this time around it will not accept 111 because it is already a duplicate value. Okay, so that's all for this demonstration. So just a recap, what we have done is, first we have created the table, named the columns. After naming the columns, and then we use data validation to place validation on our table. So why do we use validation? Validation will actually decrease the chances of our mistakes or errors in typing data. So like say for example, in our case here now, it will show us a message if we are typing already a duplicate ID, and it will show us a message in our case if the length of our name is invalid. So let's say for example, it is not logical to have a name with only 2 letters. So that's what we have done here. And then here on the courses, so it will be impossible, almost impossible for us to type a course that is not a valid course. The same with gender. And then on the total fee, so it will reduce our mistake in typing wrong values, especially values that are higher than the allowed value. And the same is true with grades here. Okay, so that is now a short demo on the use of data validation in Microsoft Excel. Thank you very much for viewing this video.